And we are live. What's going on, everybody out there? Hope you all are having a great week. Um, for as great of a week as you possibly can. There's just a lot of stuff going on in this crazy world right now. And our show will be coming up at the top of the hour where we're going to um, talk about some of it. We were off last week. Had to take care of some things with my newly graduated daughter from Winston-Salem State University. So that was much needed. But during that time, there's been some shootings and elections and things like that going on, and um, man, it's gonna be a solid hour of me getting into it because I'm be honest with y'all, I'm pretty pissed. Um, I was originally just gonna come on. We were gonna talk about. It's been 2 years, y'all, since George Floyd was murdered, and it was this 2 years this week. I remember it vividly because it was right before Memorial Day weekend when some ass decided that he was going to put his knee on his neck and basically kill him in front of everybody to see with a smirk on his face. Um, and we're really going to talk about have things really changed? The outrage, the protest. I remember being in New York City and people walking across the Brooklyn Bridge and stopping traffic and everybody coming together. It wasn't just black folks talking about Black Lives Matter. It was white folks. It was Asians. It was everybody. It was beautiful. And just, you know, wondering out loud and thinking, is this the moment? Is this finally the moment where everybody now gets it? Or is it just going to be another bump in the road where politicians have the most Teflon responses to anything? They avoid accountability. They answer questions in circles, a lot of times with a bunch of word salads, and don't really say anything or do anything. They just basically wait us out. They wait out the outrage. They wait out all of the questions and the somewhat accountability and everything. And they don't do anything because they know after a while we'll stop talking about it because not because we don't care, but because we have so many things going on in our lives that are just pulling us in so many different directions. They're banking on it. They do that when it comes to election time. All the effed up, screwed up stuff that they do, by the time it's time for voting, they just hope and pray that we're too stupid to remember what they did at that moment in time. And now there's going to be another moment in time. Where did they fall on Buffalo shooting? Where did they fall on this recent shooting in Texas? Well, they're hoping that we're going to be dumb enough to forget about it by the time it's time to vote. Because if you're listening to these politicians right now and some of these dumbass answers that they're coming up with as solutions to these violent massacres, they're not offering real solutions. And it's funny how when they don't want to address guns, now mental health is a convenient excuse. But these are the same people that cut funding for mental health. You know, the pro-life party. Definitely going to get into that. It seems like your life only matters once my sperm fertilizes an egg, but after that some bitch pops out of a woman, then it is what it is. Um, I just don't understand what's going on, other than people are prioritizing power over lives, and it's not right, and it needs to stop. But like I said, y'all, it's just been an effed up week. We're gonna get it going in about 6 minutes or 5.5 minutes, but let me go ahead and put a little bit more shine on my head. But hey, if you're watching, please share this with everybody because I'm about to go off. I promise you that. We're going to talk about George Floyd a little bit. We're going to get into what happened in Buffalo, and then we're going to have to then tie that into Texas. And uh, anybody having some deja vu of Sandy Hook? And where do we go? What do we need to do to get these politicians to realize that you can't have 90% of the country in favor of something and you twiddle your damn thumbs because the gun lobby's got their fingers so far up your ass that it's not your voice coming out, it's theirs. They don't even give you anything to read anymore. They just stick their hand so far up the crack of your ass, it's their voice coming out when your lips start moving. Anyway, I already feel it. It's coming up. Anyway, let's get the countdown going, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
It's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. Ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. It's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
It's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it. Ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it. Talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it. A comma and a comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it, get it, get it. Comma and a comma, gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket.
Welcome to another episode of Head to Head with Brian Parker. I am he. Whew. And we are also joined by Lloyd Parker. How you doing, Lloyd?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm good as can be expected. But
Well, I'm ready for you to go off.
well, I don't want to go off. But I'm afraid the subject matter is going to probably push that narrative more than anything. There's just certain things that I'm very, very passionate about. And I know that when I get to speaking about those things, it's going to probably trigger something. So I will apologize in advance for any direction that this show goes over the next hour or so. We are coming to you live, first and foremost. Thank you for tuning in. We're coming to you live on LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as YouTube. So if you please go to YouTube and search for, Lord have mercy, Parker Media Group, Empower TV Network. Like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so that when we do go live, you will get notifications about it. But the show pretty much airs live every Thursday, 6 p.m., unless there's a reason that we can't come on the air. You know, last week, definitely had to take care of some fatherly duties, so I wasn't able to come on, and that's okay. That happens sometimes. It was a good time off. There were just some things that were going on that week that I really wanted to speak on last week, but there's still a place for it this week as well. It's still fresh enough because as much as this 24-hour news cycle likes to move on to the next thing, there's still some things that are connected that keep things somewhat alive. And a lot of things need to be alive anyway, because just because the 24-hour news cycle has moved on, a lot of these things in the world today that affect people's lives, they don't move on. They're still stuck in that day that it happened. And I'm speaking right now about the shooting at the supermarket in Buffalo, New York, where we all have moved on in a lot of ways, but those families impacted by that, and that community impacted by that senseless shooting, they haven't moved on. And it's going to be quite some time before they can even imagine what moving on is like, because in moving on, you have to accept the fact that there's some people in your life that aren't going to be around anymore. So they're still trying to wrap their heads around what went on in Buffalo, and now we've got this thing that's going on in at the elementary school in Texas. Um, but before all of that, Lori, I mean, how are you? How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm very saddened and disgusted just in everything that's going on, and just the hypocrisy of the whole thing, and that people are just sitting idly by and just doing nothing because all they want to do is retain power. And it's just frustrating that these people are we elected to do a job, and they can't even do a job because they're so concerned about their own power, keeping of their power. It's just disgusting.
Yep. We'll definitely get into that. I just wanted to make aware to everybody that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Please, if
Absolutely.
it's I know it sounds like a cliche now, but it is true. It is okay not to be okay. You don't have to um, be ashamed of needing to go and seek some counseling and talk to somebody, especially with all this stuff that's going on in the world. The reason I'm bringing that up is because these things, it can shake you to your core, and you may try to compartmentalize a lot of these things, and there's just sometimes more things going on than more compartments you got to compartmentalize, and you may need a little bit of outside help, and it is okay. There is nothing wrong with that. No one should ever shame anyone about ever wanting to make sure that their physical health is okay or their mental health is okay. You go to the doctor to make sure that your mental health is okay. I mean, your physical health is okay. You should be able to go to the doctor to make sure that your mental health is okay. Because if the head ain't right, the body ain't gonna move right either. So please, if you need it, please get it. If you know of someone and you ain't checked on them in a while, don't just assume everything's okay. The one thing I will say is, please, y'all, start having meaningful conversations with people. Get down through the surface a little bit. In this day and age, with the way that cell phones have taken over our life and social media has taken over our life, it's so easy to just look at posts and stuff like that, and because people are posting things and everything looks good, to just assume that everything's okay. I would implore you to have genuine conversations with people. A lot of times, that may be the only way that we end up saving somebody's life, because somebody cared enough to really reach out and find out, are you really okay? You say you're okay. Are you really okay? And if you're not, it's okay not to be okay. But let's figure this out so that it doesn't escalate and then turn into something else. I want to give a shout out to my man, Anthony Price. Thanks for dropping by, Anthony. Says teachers are underpaid. Teachers are the ones in the front line trying to protect our kids in the school. You're absolutely right. And teachers should not have the task of trying to protect our kids from the standpoint of folks coming onto campus to do them any harm. Teachers' job should be in the classroom to make sure that our kids are being given a well-rounded education to prepare them to be able to go out into the world and be our future leaders. We can't live forever, ever. We can't maintain the things that we do. Our children, and I'm not being corny and Whitney Houston-ish, but our children are the future. And the teachers have such a role in molding, not grooming, but molding our children to become independent, critical thinkers. And they've always been underpaid. My mom was a teacher for a very, very long time. And looking back, I don't know why she went one day into a school. Not because of the shootings and stuff like that, but just because of the lack of appreciation a lot of times that teachers get. Um, it's a thankless job in a lot of ways. Um, from a lot of times the parents, from the kids, the school system don't want to pay you. Teachers are going into their pockets just to be able to, because they care so much, they're going into their own pockets and getting supplies for the class and stuff like that, which they should not have to do. And if they do it, it should be reimbursed 100%.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
that just simply doesn't happen, and there's absolutely no reason why, especially when you see these corporations that pay these executives millions and millions of dollars, but sit there and hem and haw about paying their people $15 minimum wage, which with inflation right now should be more like $21, $22 an hour, keeping it real, or as you young folks like to say, no cap. It's really a shame. So, Anthony, thank you for the comment. You're absolutely right. Um, you know, Lori, I started out my pre-show by saying it's been 2 years since George Floyd was killed, and it was Labor Day. It was Memorial Day weekend, or coming up on Memorial Day weekend, right before that. So we were literally 2 years removed, and we were about 90 days into a different life. We were into a life of COVID-19, this virus that had come over from overseas, and people were having trouble breathing, and we were inundated with shelter in place. Um, we were inundated with I'm sorry, I see that we have a special guest joining us, so let me bring him on in. When he gives me the thumbs up, because I see he's chewing on something. Give me a thumb. There you go. Look at that beautiful man. How you doing? Your franchise?
Doing good. Sorry I'm late.
It's all good. It's all good. I was just telling Lori, it's been 2 years since George Floyd was murdered.
Yes.
Right before Memorial Day weekend is when it happened. And like I said, we were going through a difficult time where COVID-19 had been on the scene for about 90 days. And people were sheltering in place. They were just getting used to this new normal of working from home. And a lot of people were just out and about more. And the thing I remembered about George Floyd, I remember that the outrage behind his murder was just vast. It wasn't Black people wearing Black Lives Matter shirts and just protesting and everything like that. It was everybody was mad. So it seemed, or a lot more people, a lot bigger coalition of different races and nationalities, people from overseas. Everybody was outraged. And I remember thinking, this ain't nothing new. But what I recognized is that, you know what? When people are forced to slow down, and that's what COVID did initially to us, it forced us to slow down because there wasn't nothing to do. You couldn't go do nothing. So more eyeballs were glued to social media and things that were going on, and watching this man be denied the ability to breathe for 9 minutes and 29 seconds struck a chord with people in a way that Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, I go on and on and on. Michael Brown, none of those really struck with people outside of the African American community. The George Floyd situation just took over. Hey, Danielle, us Brits here just don't get your gun culture there. You need tougher laws. You shouldn't one be able to buy them so easy. Amen, Danielle. We're going to definitely talk about that because you're absolutely right. Because our politicians over here are controlled by outside groups that pay them hush money, basically, to shut up and let them keep making guns that kill people,
Hey,
all behind the shield that they're pro-life. Um, but I don't want to go into that just yet because I feel it coming.
can I jump in just real quick on your George Floyd thing? And so you made the comparisons to other incidents, tragedies, atrocities that have happened. And I think the thing that really cemented it for George Floyd, it was different, was when you look at traffic stops, when you look at confrontation stuff, there's a quick escalation of things. And the big thing was, I think a lot of people said it didn't, it didn't matter what he did, because that's usually the first thing you say. Well, what did the person do? Because black people are generally the only people that get blamed in their own murders and stuff. Because what did they do? They shouldn't have been there. Shouldn't have been wearing this. Shouldn't have been doing that. Shouldn't have
Should have
complied.
resisted, should have complied. Yeah, all that.
But it's always a quick reaction. The George Floyd thing resonated home. Like, this guy looked into the camera, and it was over 9 minutes. And I went to one of the protests and stuff, and we took a knee for that 9 minutes and 20 something, 26 seconds.
29, yeah.
29 seconds. And now I've got bad knees. I'm bone my knees and stuff like that. But it's a long time to be on your knee. It's a long time. And so when you talk about, this thing resonating, it resonated because it was like, well, even if he had done something, there was enough time that this was blatant abuse. We talk about Tamir Rice was shot in 12 seconds. Not 12 seconds.
Very quickly, very quickly.
It's it was like it was like 4 or 5 seconds for the cop getting out of the car before he was dead on the ground. When we talk about a lot of these other incidents, they were very, very quick that happened and stuff. But here you see a blatant, I don't have an excuse kind of moment for what's going on. Other hands in pocket, not afraid of what's going on, just murder man. And there was an excuse to that. So I think that's the thing that outraged a lot of people and galvanized the community to come together.
Yeah. No, I totally agree that. But I think, though, Jermaine, what happened was, too, more people actually stopped to look at it, because to your point, unfortunately, our culture is, if a police officer is having to restrain and detain a person of color, obviously they did something wrong. Because surely the officer would not have escalated it, because they are trained in de-escalation. So the only way that it could have escalated is if they were provocated to do so. Now, Danielle across the pond there says it certainly doesn't matter what George Floyd did in his past. He was defenseless in that situation, and the cop knew he could have stopped. And what upset me, that upset me so much to see that video. And you're right. So Danielle's absolutely right. And to what Jermaine is saying is that knowing that if you felt like you had to put your knee on him to subdue him or to get him into compliance, there's a big difference between the first minute and 30 seconds and 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Yeah. Like there's a big gap in between that. So because of the duration, it was almost like a lynching. It was a lynching because it was a duration. It wasn't like you said with Tamir Rice where it was pop. But there were other instances. And the sad part was these things happened a lot, but sometimes they were on camera and sometimes they weren't. But when they weren't on camera, the officers' version is always going to be taken seriously.
Yep.
And and that was the problem. But people saw this and finally said, enough is enough. This has to stop now. And for once, I said, you know what? This might be it right here. This is when America became woke. Or this is when politicians started talking about people being woke. because what was happening was, instead of just dismissing something as an African American issue, they couldn't address it that way anymore, because a lot of times at these rallies and at these protests, African Americans were the minority of the protesters. They couldn't say a lot of that anymore, because when they would see these people wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts, they weren't black. And that was a great thing to see, because it's one thing for a person of color to be able to say Black Lives Matter, but the whole point behind that was to get everybody else to accept that as truth and fact, because what we were saying is there's just too much evidence out there that Black lives do not matter. And I
Well,
really felt like, for the first time, that everything going on with George Floyd, sorry, Jay, everything going on with George Floyd was going to start to point us in the direction where more and more people realize, you know what? I think they've been kind of telling the truth the whole time now. And then they started finding out that a lot of these cops been fudging reports and things like that. Whether it was George Floyd, where initially the tape didn't come out that way because the people were told that it was a drug issue. He overdosed. Or when Ahmaud Arbery was killed, that kind of got brushed under, because you had a district attorney that was trying to cover things up, and it had to be escalated. The George Floyd thing had to be escalated, taken away from the local county prosecutors. And if not for Attorney General Keith Ellison, Derek Chauvin would not be in prison right now. So a lot of people started seeing, well, wait a minute, we were always grown up in the belief that the guys in the uniform were above reproach, and that they would be honest and tell the truth. And certainly if they had to use force, then it was warranted. But that just what really wasn't the case. And I think that started opening up people's eyes. Go ahead, Jermaine. I'm sorry.
no. Well, two things. I got here late, so I don't know if there's a question or we're just talking about the George Floyd and stuff.
We're just talking.
Okay.
We're just
Well, so I'll say this: everything is about presentation or narration, and the narrative that's been put out. And so, for people who've never heard me talk about this before, go Google "Birth of a Nation." You can find it on YouTube and stuff. It's an old movie and stuff. And basically, for me, that's a modern day narrative for Black people and criminalizing Black people on a national level and stuff. And so when we talk about what did they do, Black people getting blamed for getting killed and stuff like that with their interactions with the police, or well, anybody really, it goes back to narrative and stuff. And that this country, as we talk about critical race theory, which isn't a real thing on in grammar school or high school or even college, it's a master's degree law stuff that they look at for correlation between systemic racism and the way that laws are written and cases determined. But given all that, America does a really good job of covering up its history. And so there are a lot of things, like when you say, we talk about the crack epidemic and the way it was portrayed as opposed to today's opioid pandemic as a mental health, as a health crisis. There are a lot of things that are just portrayed differently because people are Black and stuff. Even we sit there and talk about there were a couple attacks on Asian people, and they were quick to make an anti-Asian hate bill. And a lot of people like to say that, well, it's inclusive for all, but it's not. There's one, the politicians, especially Democrats, all about symbolic gestures and stuff. And so if they can do that, then they can do an anti-Black hate crime, but they won't. It took a long time. How many years did it take for them to pass anti-lynching?
Yes.
And so when we talk about narratives in this country and the erasure of truth and the retelling of tales, when Black people were freed from slavery and stuff, they actually did very well in the next 30, 40 years after slavery and stuff. And that's why we get into Tulsa's and Rosewoods and Wilmingtons and Chicago's and New Orleans and all these places. There were lots of wealthy Black cities where, when we were segregated, Black people did very well for themselves. And so that's and that's why I point to Birth of the Nation as a recruiting tool. It was a recruiting tool for the Klan, but it was actually more than that. It was propaganda for the nation. And so this country has a history of propaganda that leads to these outcomes. And so we say we've been taught that if there's a police officer says something that he couldn't be telling a lie and stuff, that's that propaganda. That's not a realistic view. Every career has their average, their excellent, and their excuses at the end. And so police we've kind of romanticized policing in America to the place that no police officer could be bad. And if they are bad, it's just them by themselves. And we don't account for the fact that they have co-workers who see them do these bad things. Like you would think that if there was somebody at McDonald's that was peeing in the fries and stuff, that there'd be somebody beside them that saw them doing that and can hold them accountable and stuff. But what they're saying is that there's isolation and there's no way to be held accountable and stuff on that front and stuff. But we look back, like when I was growing up and stuff, I thought cowboys and Indians, cowboys good guys, Indians bad guys. I thought Indians were primitive. Indians had whole cities, like not just teepees. They had buildings and cities and roads and commerce and trade routes and stuff like that was all wiped away. But that's not the story that you get told. There are a lot of things. If you go back,
the Indians were the aggressors.
Yeah, they were the aggressors and stuff. And I bet there's no culture that wish they could take back helping somebody more than the Indians and let them perish through that first winter and stuff. So I say all that to say that the history of this country allows the perception and the viewpoint now. And when you saw George Floyd, it ripped all that apart and said, no, lay bare, these are the sins of our fathers and stuff that allow these things to go on and stuff. Police have been brutalizing minorities for years. I mean, that's a known fact. They even allude to it in gangster movies when they had the Irish. That's how the Irish legitimized themselves from minority to white, was they became police officers and stuff. They policed and they were brutal on other minorities and stuff, and so they became the enforcers or the overseers and stuff for that white protection and stuff, for the protection of white supremacy. And so that's how they entered into that covenant. And they allowed them to enforce a cruel regime. And you'll see it in old movies and stuff. They allude to it. Oh, they roughed this guy up and stuff. Well, that's not justice. But we romanticize that kind of stuff. Even in our current, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s and stuff. And if you look at the movies, the buddy cop movies that came through that time, the action flicks that came that time, and the cops, what were they doing? Oh, we had to bend the rules or break the rules in order to get the things done and stuff. And so it was justified to beat people who didn't look like them and who were criminals and stuff because that's just what it was and stuff. And those criminals were portrayed by us. And so there's just been a national narrative about who Black people are and what they do. And that's what, when you look and say, well, why is it like that? Because even subconsciously, whether people are actively thinking that stuff, they've been bombarded with these images for years, decades, centuries.
Absolutely. Let me just bust in. Anthony said that I think it's more white cops that think that they can get away, always get away with murder. They can do this and go home free. Well, to what Jermaine was just saying, Anthony, I agree with you. But it's more so because if you've constantly grew up in a culture where you could get away with murder, then and the culture in our police departments, unfortunately, has been you can get away with murder. So that has been when it's funny when they talk about grooming in schools. There's grooming in a lot of places, and a lot of different cultures have been groomed to believe that as long as you're an officer and you have a badge, your word is going to carry more weight. What actually went down doesn't really matter, because as long as I have this badge, I'm going to hold a certain amount of reverence that people will always give me the benefit of the doubt automatically. You
Well,
like,
my big thing with that is that um, there are I would estimate well over 80% of police officers are doing a great job, right? But it's like anything or any organization and stuff. If you continue to allow the people that are doing a bad job to take front and again control narrative for your department and stuff, that's why police relationships are weakening, because it's not community-based policing anymore. It's people coming from different places, not doing policing so much. They're not there to serve and protect. They're there to spread fear and control. And those are the kind of things that when you say, people think they have a badge and they can do whatever, I submit that that's not most police officers. But my complaint to those police officers is that they don't hold the bad apples accountable. It's like Muhammad Ali once said, when asked talking about, he was talking, they asked him about white people and races and stuff. He said, if you had 10,000 snakes coming towards you, but there were 1,000 good snakes in that 10,000 good snakes, would you open the door to try to figure out which ones are the good snakes, or would you close the door? Well, it's the same thing with bad apples and stuff. When we understand, because when I say this, there will be some people who say, well, Jermaine, you can't say that because you're demonizing a whole group based on a small percentage. And I would say, but that's what police officers do to black people. They demonize a whole group based on a small percentage. We're only 13, almost 14% of the nation and stuff. We can't be everywhere. When every white person in the country says they have a black friend and stuff, there's not enough of us numerically for everybody to have. And I don't know there's some black people who don't fuck with white people at all. So there's even less that actually have white friends and stuff. So when white people say, I got a black friend and stuff, a lot of y'all are going to a lot of dinner parties.
well,
y'all are hanging.
See, it depends on how they define friend, because now you can just friend and follow somebody on social media. Depending on what your level of friendship is. Hell, I don't know how people, because I've spoken to somebody that was a different race. Now I got friends that are, so it just kind of really depends on a level of friendship that people people that dumb.
It does. What I was really getting to is that while I believe that most officers are good officers and they do not abuse their power, I need them to police themselves better. I've said this before. When we look at policing is a local issue. And even Joe Biden, if he wants to do executive orders about more accountability for police and stuff, that's only on the federal level. And I don't think that we as a community are worried about the feds so much, unless you're a rapper in Georgia. I don't think you're really worried about the feds coming to you and stuff. It's the local stuff.
And he got somebody named Rico looking for you.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know who this Rico dude is, but I would mess with him.
They snitch on themselves. They snitch on themselves through social media.
Well, so real brief, since I brought it up and stuff, that's BS. It's entertainment. Ain't nobody ever arrested Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger, and everybody called them terrorists and stuff. And I don't know how many people they've fictionally killed and stuff and portrayed characters and stuff. That's what these dudes do in their songs. They're portraying characters and stuff. They're trying to use that against somebody. And again, you don't do that to white people. Eminem has talked about killing and stuff like that, and I don't see nobody going to M's house to try to get him and say that he's gangster and stuff. And so that's ridiculous. But again, the big thing, my point was that police officers are generally mostly good. There are people who abuse their power and stuff, but they just need to be held accountable by their peers. And it needs to be local initiatives to do that, combined with community involvement, because we don't work for the police work for us. And so every oversight for the police shouldn't be internal affairs. It should be the community that they are charged to protect, because we're the ones that get to say that our customer service isn't bad. Imagine going to Applebee's and complaining and stuff. And they go, well, we'll take that to Applebee's internal affairs and stuff, but we're not going to listen to your complaints, even though it's your meal and you're the customer. It sounds ridiculous, and it's ridiculous for police officers too.
Absolutely. While you were speaking, Anthony had just clarified what he said about cops getting away with murder. He said, I think he said his comment was from the movie Freelancers. If you've seen it, I haven't. But your point is still well taken, Anthony. But no, you're absolutely right. So yeah, so the whole thing with George Floyd. I mean, like I said, I really thought that was going to become a gateway towards us just waking up a little bit more. And I have seen some things progress. The whole Ahmaud Arbery situation that went down, while it didn't prevent Ahmaud from getting killed, being able to see a jury that had one African American on it put these guys away for life was huge. But then you had the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. So it kind of, it's still a work in progress, but I have seen a little bit more acknowledgement from stemming from George Floyd. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is George Floyd did not go in vain. We wish George was still here. He deserves to still be here. But if anything could come good out of that tragedy, it's that it seems like it has shaken enough, or at least more people to start to realize that this is not okay. I ain't saying everybody. Now, for some people, it turned political and people became woke. And now wokeism is another branding thing that you brought up, Jermaine, where now people get branded into being woke. And somehow that's a bad thing, that because being woke only means that you're aware of the things that are going on in the world, and you're trying to make sure that change can happen. You know, they always talk about change happens from within. You know, that one person has to change, then that influences and inspires change. Somehow that's a bad thing now, because the more the world moves towards changing, the more people get uncomfortable, or now want to sit there and say, now they're being made to feel uncomfortable about things that happened in the past, because they don't get to retell the story the way they want to anymore. So before I go into that whole CRT though, Jermaine, where I was going with that was, it really gave me the idea that maybe things were starting to change. And then Buffalo happened, you know, early last week, and I was going to talk about it on the show, but we didn't have a show. Where a gunman decides to go to area code that has a high concentration of Black folks and decides to go into a grocery store and shoot up the place, even to the point of having racial slurs etched onto his gun, having a manifesto that started talking about basically this great replacement theory that has been spouted around for many, many years, but had a resurgence. You know, a lot of people give Tucker Carlson too much credit, but he deserves a lot of it on this one, because he brings it up on his show a lot of times, and he has the #1 cable news show, where so his platform does inspire a lot of people, because a lot of people do see his platform. What he's saying isn't something new that hadn't been said before. It's just the fact that he has an amplification tool called Fox News, where he's able to put that foolishness out there. But if anybody doesn't understand what the replacement is that there's a theory out there that white folks are going to be replaced. Who is that? Is that Kennedy? I guess so. Hey, Kennedy.
Tallest thing in my house.
I said, you got to bend down. I can't see you, girl. You're too tall. Bend down.
I just see the cat.
Bend down.
With her mama. Hi. Hello.
That's your twin. Look at them twins. Look at them twins. But yeah. Are those drums? Lord have mercies. Oh my gosh, she's gonna be 12 next month, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Already.
5'11".
5'11", 12-year-old. Wow. So anywho, the replacement theory basically says that white folks are being replaced by people of color. There is a strategy out there to replace white people with people of color. This is a great replacement. And what they're basically saying is this, Jermaine. This is the crazy part, that Democrats, because it's a political thing, are working their hardest to immigrate people across the border that are people of color so that they can turn them into Democrats, so they can vote Democrat, put all the Republicans out of office, and then the Republicans, or the white, I'm sorry, because only Republicans are white apparently, but then the Republicans can then become the minority. So they call it it's the great replacement theory.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of holes with this because you can't be replaced if you ain't going nowhere. It ain't like for every Mexican we bring across the border, 2 white folks got to go to Guatemala.
Well, 3 things real quick. Number 1, Charles Manson.
Yes.
How many people did he kill?
A whole lot.
No. He didn't kill anybody.
Oh, that's right. Oh, Manson.
No, he directed people to his followers to do his bidding. But
yeah, Manson.
So
right.
Tucker Carlson, the justice system would probably like to have a word with you. Because you don't have to, because Manson proved that you don't have to actually lay your hands on somebody. You just have to preach a certain doctrine.
You inspire it, right?
Execute and stuff. And Manson played innocent too. The second thing with your the great replacement thing is that there's one thing that they're completely right about, is that birth rates among whites have dropped.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so what they're concerned about is that replacement, because their birth rate, but it's not just theirs. People just don't have 12 kids anymore, right? It's just it's financially unsustainable to have large families like that. So there's a little trickeration with numbers there when you talk about birth rates falling off, and therefore what the projected population levels would be for white Americans. The last thing is that we kind of catch back the reason that all this is important when we talk about Roe versus Wade and its replacement theory, why it's important for them to overturn abortions, because one thing they'll tell you is that these numbers line up with Roe versus Wade. In the last 50 years, these population numbers have dropped off and stuff. And so overturning that in forced pregnancy and stuff will help with the population stuff. Now, they don't care what happens when they get here, but they just need to get here for numbers. And so all this stuff is connected, right? I'm the black conspiracy theorist on here that, there's not just one single message and stuff.
Oh, no, that's my theory too.
And I'm sorry, anybody that believes that Democrats can enact any plan and get it done
is giving them way too much credit.
Way too much credit for Democrats.
Way too much credit.
It's sort of like the whole Trump thing when they were like, Trump's an idiot, but he's a genius. So because there were certain things they were like, oh, he's got this plan, it's not possible.
Yeah, what's his strategy? Wait. You just said he was an idiot. How could he have a strategy?
Yeah, and same thing for Joe Biden. Either he's asleep,
right,
or he's masterminding this replacement theory, right? And stuff. But he can't be both,
right?
Or maybe he just takes long naps. I guess maybe there's a difference there. But that's the thing, anybody that has faith, because I don't have faith in any Democratic politician that can pull off anything half this complicated stuff. You'd be better off telling me Illuminati, and I mean Marvel's Illuminati was behind it.
Well, Jermaine, but Jermaine, that goes into the same thing, that they say that the Democrats were smart enough to get Trump's ass voted out, yet he got 11 million more votes. But they lost majorities in the House and didn't gain a majority in the Senate. But they were masterminds because they were able to rig the system to get rid of Trump, but they couldn't rig it to take control of the House and the Senate so that we wouldn't have to be worrying about a damn filibuster. Huh?
Well, I mean, so now, if I'm a conspiracy guy, and I believe there's only one real party or one real power that controls the country anyway, and all this is just theater and stuff. And sometimes I do believe it's sort of like when you got all the answers to the test, you got to miss a couple so they don't know they can't catch on. You can't just get a straight 100. You can't get a straight 100 after you stole all the answers to the test and stuff.
Right.
So is that where you're going the whole line C?
Yeah.
No, you got the right answers, but then the last three.
You got to throw a couple.
He said you got to throw a couple over just so that they keep it honest, that they don't get suspicious.
It's like New England. They know your plays, but they can't jump all your routes.
Right.
We'll just wait to the critical times and then we'll jump a route.
Right. You know what? That's actually plausible.
I'm just saying, because again, I believe there's one, because you can't tell me that there are that many, so there were people who protested outside of the Supreme Court Justice's house, and they immediately enacted wholeheartedly, like in a big way, together, nonpartisan, came up with new laws to help protect the justices from protesters.
Mm-hmm.
Yet Ron DeSantis passed a law that you can run them some bitches over in the street.
You run protests over the street stuff. And so you can't tell me that they can come together to give Ukraine billions of dollars. They come together to do this kind of stuff, the anti-Asian hate, and even with the
or baby formula.
Or baby formula. So now that's the thing. Now the baby formula thing was not a partisan, bipartisan thing, because Republicans again are not really pro-life so much as they're pro-birth, because they need the birth rate.
It's pro-birth, not pro-life.
They don't give a damn about them babies, but they give a damn about my sperm hitting that egg.
What you know what?
But you need to feed them. You need to feed the babies.
Well, the hell with them babies.
I say a lot of things, but the things I do are more important than the things I say. So everything I say on here, you can take it with a grain of salt, because the actionable things that I do are more important than my theories or my insistence that the history of this country is fucked up, and therefore we judge, and most people do judge people by their past behavior to predict their future behavior and stuff. And that's why when I say, because everything I say goes back to, well, we've already seen this, right? That's why we're here and stuff. And I know it's a broken record every week, because it doesn't matter what the topic is.
It always comes back to that.
I can always go back to it and stuff. Be like, and so I know there are a lot of people like, well, I'm probably no better than Tucker Carlson, because he sings the same song and dance, and I do the same thing on my side, right? I'm singing the same song and dance. I'm beating the same drum over and over again and stuff,
But in fairness, you don't look like this when you're doing it.
And in addition to that, you're way better looking than Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, so, and you're not just asking questions. Why is that? Why is that? you don't do that whole stick. Thank God. Why is that?
Well, because for him that's a liability thing, because he can always say, "I was just asking a question. I wasn't making a statement."
Right. And that's what he used. And actually, when they actually had to defend him in court, they basically said he's not to be taken seriously. He's just an entertainer.
Yeah.
They use that as a defense as to why Fox News should not be sued and should be indemnified, is because anybody with a reasonable sense of mind. And it was funny, Sidney Powell, when the Kraken was starting to get sued, they came up with the same defense that was, well, surely people with a right mind know not to take her seriously. Like, okay, well, she didn't preempt any of her speeches by saying everything you like how you see an infomercial on TV and they say the following infomercial does not necessarily represent the views and da. She never really started out any of her press conferences with Rudy, I'm melting Giuliani with any of those statements before she started speaking. So that's going to kind of be hard to put toothpaste back in the tube at that point. But anywho's, where I was going to is that the Great Replacement is that theory where folks are thinking that they're going to be replaced, and this stirs up a bunch of fear in white people to go out and try to do something about the fact that they're taking over. Why do you think every time during an election year, and you'll hear it this time during this election year, probably sometime around September, that there's a damn caravan of migrants at the border just waiting to bust in? Every September they come, every October they magically disappear, like Trump said the coronavirus would. It's weird that it's like Jermaine just said about how Tucker Carlson has the same stick. Well, some of the Republicans have that same stick too, to scare enough white folks to come vote so that they don't come take you, rape your daughters and your wives, and take over your property. They're already and what else happens? Oh, they're trying to take your guns. They try and take your ammunition. It's all fear tactics to get people riled up, even though they do understand that some of these people, when they get riled up, decide to take things into their own hands and it leads to violence. They know this. They know it. And now, just a couple of days removed from Buffalo, Sandy Hook Part 2 happens. And I'm going to be straight up with y'all. I am so sick and tired of thoughts and
prayers.
You know,
I want that blown away.
Lori, I think half these some bitches don't even give thoughts and two prayers about any of these things. Now, yeah, Brian, you can't question what's in somebody's heart. The hell I can't. Now, maybe the first couple of times I could, but you're not going to be able to say to me that when there's a mass shooting of 19 kids and 2 teachers, that you're looking into a camera and seriously saying that had there only been one damn door,
and in armed security guards for them to sit here and to stop.
You know, guns don't kill people. People kill people with guns. And the best way to take down a bad guy with a gun is have a good guy with a gun. Well, people that were good are dead.
And have armed and have the teachers who are already fighting to get supplies, molds, children, and have them become armed because they're going to be the next defense for coming on a next mass shooting.
Listen, if I was a teacher and I had a gun in my classroom, who's to say when the sheriff and everybody else pull up and they see a black guy with a gun trying to take down the real assailant, oh, well, he had to die too because we didn't know if he was really the gunman. That is not an answer. But the problem is, and I want y'all to understand this, the gun lobby has their hands so far up these politicians' asses. Jermaine saying no, but I'm going to let you tell me why not. That when they speak, their words come out. These folks understand that their bread is not, and again, I say this all the time about voting, whether they're Republican or Democrat. When special interests get into politics, these people care more about the seat that they're sitting in than the classroom that your children sit in. They care more about the seat that they sit in than the kitchen table that y'all sit around trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills. How we can keep gas prices down. Why the fact that we have a monopolies on baby formula, and then everybody want to scream and hoop and holler because there's a recall. Now we out of baby formula, and or how some of the USMCA probably messed that up too. They don't care about that. They care about greasing their pockets, y'all. But every single time y'all let these pro-life people tell y'all that they care about y'all and black people coming to take your jobs and there's an immigration problem, yet the unemployment rate is low and all this other stuff, then we keep voting them back in office because they know that as bad as what happened in Texas, this too shall pass. And when it's time for you to elect me, I'm going to scare the hell out of you to the point that you're going to elect a Republican back in the office because we're going to scare you. Now understand, I'm not taking the Democrats off the hook here because the Democrats are feckless. If it was me, I'd be running bills 24/7. Chuck Schumer should not even get to sit down. He should be putting another bill on the floor every damn day.
And he doesn't have to do that because he just.
But see, here's the problem. And Jermaine, I waited 2 weeks. I was going to put together a video compilation, but I ain't get time to do it. It was going to start out with Ludacris yelling, "Roll out." It was going to start, and then it was going to be Tina Turner talking about "Big Wheels Keep on Rolling." And it was all going to be an homage to Madison Cawthorn getting kicked out of Congress. Because I knew that you could appreciate that. So as long as you're talking about cocaine fueled orgies, the Republicans will figure out how to get your ass out of Congress. Democrats will run all these negative ads against other Democrats because they're progressives to keep them out of office, but they won't go against folks in their own party. Jermaine, the reason that I say they need to hold these votes is because there are probably a handful of Democrats too that agree with some of these Republicans. The only two you ever hear about is Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. But that's a crock of crap. They are not the only two. They're the only two that are vocal, but there's a bunch of centrist Democrats out there that hold a lot of those same values. Hell, you got Henry Cuellar down there in Texas that Nancy Pelosi backs, and he's he's pro-abortion too. I mean, anti-abortion too. But you don't hear about that because why? Because there's a progressive running against him. So it goes on both sides. I'm not saying the Democrats are totally clean from this whole gun lobby thing, Jay, but I'm gonna be straight up with you. The Republicans are totally lost because they want to blame, well, it's not the time to talk about it. It never is the time to talk about it. We need more police. We need more this. We need one damn door. They come up with all these things instead of saying, in Texas, you can buy an AR-15 at 18, but you can't get a handgun until you're 21.
Or drink.
So I'm gonna do a Tucker Carlson. Why is that? I'm just asking questions.
Well, I know the answer to that, but let me jump in real quick. So the reason I'm shaking my head no is that, so what you're saying is that these politicians are responsible for this stuff. And what I say is it's not politicians. And it's not the NRA, and it's not all these other people and stuff. It's everyday Americans who don't hold people accountable.
No, absolutely.
Ultimately, that's who I blame. When those kids were murdered and stuff, I don't blame the politicians because they voted for those politicians, and they knew their stances, and they knew the consequences of those stances and stuff. They voted for them because my grandmother votes that way, or this is what I've been told, again, in accurate history and stuff. Or even and so when we talk about centrists and stuff, there's nothing wrong with having Republican and Democrat centrists who are more towards the middle, because again, I believe most of America feels the same way about all these issues. When we talk about background checks, it's 90% approval for American people and stuff. So why don't we have it and stuff? It's because you choose your fights. Like you say, there's a Democrat that's anti-abortion. Look, man, whatever your beliefs are, those are your beliefs. And I can see, and I have enough empathy, I can see, especially like if you were Catholic or you're highly religious, or there's something in your culture that says that that's evil and stuff like that, where you would take that stance and you would ignore things. Because look, let's be honest, the Bible was not the most EEO friendly thing out there and stuff. It talked of the time of slaves, women not having rights, men having all the power with multiple wives and children and all this kind of stuff. And so when you're looking at religious standpoints on stuff, you're not looking at progressive views about how things are. But again, when we say this like every other week, if not every week, that vote matters, your vote counts and stuff like that. And your vote kills kids. And you can try, you can go to sleep and you cannot think about it and stuff. But so Kennedy, my youngest, she's 11 years old. She might be almost as tall as me now, but she's 11 years old. And she didn't want to go to school. She was afraid to go to school, legitimately afraid to go to school. What do I say to my daughter about the fact that she could go to the grocery store and get murdered? She could go to school and get murdered. So we could get pulled over by police and get murdered. What do I say about her in this country? What does it say about this country that I have to have this conversation with my 11-year-old, but they're writing laws in certain states that we don't want to talk about certain things because it makes other people feel uncomfortable?
That's true. I mean, you're sitting there trying to take away books and this and that and the other, yet active shooter drills are just something called Thursday. I
Yeah.
mean, you have more damn active shooter. You know, the biggest drills I remember having in school was we'd have tornado drills and fire drills every now and then just to practice that. Now these kids grow up having to practice what to do when some lunatic comes into your school with a damn gun. And the only thing that these politicians can offer is arm the teachers because
Well,
And thoughts and prayers.
that's
you
gonna
know,
go well.
they, and so one of the things about this most recent shooting is that the police were outside
Yes.
for at least 40 to 50 minutes before they
Yep.
maybe an hour before they even went in and stuff. So when we
Yeah.
talk about we need better funded police officers, that's not it. They sat outside and let that dude stay in there and kill more people. It could have been less people. In fact, one of the things that they found out was when the police did enter, they asked the kids if they needed help to yell out. Well, one little girl yells out, and the government goes over there and shoots her.
Mm-hmm.
When we
Absolutely.
talk about
On the
inadequate,
phone calling police.
we talk about yeah, when we talk about you hear these stories, the parents, the only reason the police went in because the parents were hearing their kids screaming in
Mhm.
terror and pain and dying, and the parents were going to go in because the police wouldn't do it.
Do it.
What
You
do
know,
I tell my children who look at me and say, "Dad, I don't feel like going to school because I don't want to die"? What can I tell them? I hate to drop them off. I really do because I don't know if that's the last time I get to see my children alive.
or the parents that had to identify their kids
By
with their
DNA.
DNA. Because the way an AR-15 will work is it will shred your damn body.
Well, so here's the thing, and so traditionally, the reason that they can get AR-15 because the AR-15 is the long rifle, and so long rifle are hunting rifles and stuff, and so you can have your own debate about magazine capacity and stuff like that, but that's what it is. And so one of the things I've always pointed out on the show is that part of the reason that gun debates are not really taken well on both sides is because people on one side want to talk about guns, but they don't know what they're talking about. And so when you tell somebody, when you mislabel something, and when you speak the wrong specifications, they immediately denounce you because you don't know what you're talking about in the gun debate and stuff. And so they will tell you, well, long rifles are traditionally hunting weapons. 18-year-olds can go out there and hunt. Whether it was shotguns, long rifles, and stuff. And that's all it is stuff. You had to wait till you're 21 to get a handgun. Yes, because traditionally handguns had bigger capacity than rifles and stuff. Usually bolt action rifles or one shot rifles and stuff like that. Shotguns holding anywhere from 3 to, well, it just depends on the choke, how many shells that you can put in a shotgun and stuff. But they're not weapons that traditionally had a large magazine capacity. A lot of people talk about, the AR-15 style weapon and stuff. I've got AR-15. I've got 45. I've got handguns and rifles in my house because I believe all black people in this country, based on their history, should be armed. Because if the police come knocking at my door, it's not going to be a fun time.
Jermaine, can you kind of help the audience understand the difference between an AR-15 and a shotgun that you would use for hunting?
Range. And the simplest thing I could tell you would be range. You know, if you were doing AR-15, you get more range. So animals like deer that can be easily spooked that can smell you and stuff like that, you can catch them at range. A shotgun, you can kill rabbits or small animals with, which is still not probably a good thing because you're probably gonna ruin the meat with it. But shotguns are more self-defense than they are. Geese. People shoot geese with shotguns and stuff like that, and other fowl. But I guess the thing is that the conversation about weapons and gun control, it's already been had majority, and most people are okay with background checks. They're okay with waiting periods. They're okay with mental health. They're okay. And so in Texas, and when
Abbott,
not Abbott, but
Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke challenged Abbott and said this was your fault. Texas made it easier
Yes.
to walk around with
because you don't have to go to get any training.
You know, nothing and stuff. And so when people talk about the Second Amendment and stuff, the Second Amendment does not and has never said anything about individuals owning guns. That is some of the you talk about narrative stuff, and it's easy because a lot of people who hide behind the Second Amendment have never read the tiny paragraph that the Second Amendment is. It talks about a well-trained and regulated militia. Well, if you got a regulated militia, why wouldn't the individuals need to be regulated too? It does not guarantee people put that in there. It does not guarantee individual people's right to bear arms and stuff. That right was based on the idea of a militia because America did not have a national army when it was formed and stuff. They didn't want to have one. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. We don't have enough time to get into it, but they didn't want to have one. They didn't have one. That's why state militias, National Guards were important back then. And that's why it was important for them to put that in there, that they could protect themselves. But they meant organized, not individually. That's not what it says. And even if it did say that, I don't care what some slave owners got to say anyway.
Yeah, facts. Lori? No final thoughts? Go for it, Lori.
Well, I'm putting it up there because we can go back on a roundabout circle and starting. But Jermaine, you had some great points. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm just fully disgusted, especially with the thoughts and prayers. And, you know, with the tragedy that happened in Uvalde, Texas, and with the killing of all the children, those two teachers, and especially that teacher whose husband, because of his grief, had a heart attack. Right. So their 4 children have lost both their parents.
Yeah.
Because of this tragedy and because of this, it is just disgusting. And when you're going back to the beginning of the show, when you were talking about George Floyd and then how people being woke, what my question is to the panel and to everyone out there is, how woke are you going to start protesting on this? Because we talked about Buffalo happening for people. Now you can't shop and go to the grocery store, or you're going to be targeted for that. And there's no protest about that. But I'm saying with this tragedy, where are we going to start getting the protest of getting these people out of they're not doing their jobs and they need to go? And I need for the same, I can't say the word as enthusiasm, but fervor that they had. We're saying that and seeing these same tragedies with George Floyd and any person of color that is being pulled over. I need that same fervor. There's no fervor. And especially that you have killed 19 children that all they wanted to do was learn. They just came in there. They had a ceremony for their grades. And to have that tragedy happen, I need for everyone that either says that they give a damn or in any form to get that same fervor and move forward to get these lame duck politicians out of office, because it's disgusting that every time that we cannot, in our own lives, we can't do normal things, and it's being affected because of the color of your skin, or you are not in the other class.
Jermaine.
My final thoughts. Everyone lies. I lie. Whether it's to bend the truth a little bit to make a story more exciting, whether it's to exclude some things that maybe some details that I don't want to come to light. I think the most tragic lies are the lies that we tell ourselves. When we lie and say that our vote doesn't matter, there's nothing we can do. When we lie to ourselves and say that the history of this country should be told, but not told that way. When we lie to each other about how we should treat each other, maybe it's time that we start telling the truth. Maybe it's time that we got honest with ourselves, because again, that's the most tragic lie, when you lie to yourself. So let's be honest. Let's be honest, America. Let's look into our hearts. Let's really see what's there, and let's come together like the great nation that we're supposed to be. But let's tell the truth when we do it. That we have some prejudice, that we've been told some bad information, that we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to be better. Because that really should be our truth. Our truth should be that I'm going to do something and I'm accountable. That those lives, whether it was Buffalo, whether it was those 19 children and the 2 adults, George Floyd, that we're not going to accept any more lies, and we're going to tell the truth. That we're going to step forward and we're going to step up. You know, sort of like the truth that I have to tell my children about when they have to go to school, and that their safety might not be as guaranteed as I want it to be. But I'm not going to lie anymore, and I'm going to tell the truth. Will you?
Man, y'all putting a little pressure on me. So let me thank my co-hosts, Jermaine, the franchise, and Lori for their thoughts and coming on to the show. You know, it was funny in a way when I sat there and listened to a blithering idiot who is a representative from Georgia that has no committees because she was put off of her committees, sit in her car on a camera and talk about white nationalism and why everybody's making such a fuss about white nationalism, and trying to equate it to other crimes that have happened, and that Buffalo wasn't about that. It was just about a mentally deranged person shooting up a grocery store. And the problem is that there are too many people that listen to this blithering idiot, Marjorie Green. And yeah, you're right, because it makes people feel better when you don't have to make it about white nationalism. But the problem was simply this: the shooter made it about white nationalism. The revisionist history that the Republicans do, and let me be clear, this thing about both sidesism, eat both sides do it, is a bunch of crap. Both sides are bad, but it doesn't mean that they're equally bad. So let me give you an example of that. Republicans want to mislead you into believing that white nationalism is no better than black on black crime, which is not a thing. They want you to believe that it's no different than Mexicans coming across the border and raping your wives and your kids and taking your property. That things aren't really based on race. That's just a Democrat talking point, because they want to scare you into believing of those types of things. But the shooter in Buffalo etched the N-word on his rifle, on his gun, as he was killing us. He deliberately traveled hours to a place because he knew it had a higher concentration of black people than the area he was in. He mentioned the Great Replacement theory in his manifesto, which was a lot of the stuff that he had was a copycat from the New Zealand killings, where that gunman also preached hate and white nationalism. Do not let these politicians try to trick you into that. This is supposed to be the party of pro-life. Yet there are no policies that they can go to other than their abortion stance to give you any indication that they're pro-life. Congress held a bill last week about baby formula, guys. How freaking controversial is, hey, let's bring some baby formula in because people are scared that there's not enough formula for their kids. You know what the Republicans did? Oh, we ain't gonna vote for that. You know why? Because they're gonna give the formula to the illegal babies. As if even if the babies that are currently at the border chose to be at the border, as if the validity of a child's life depends on whose coochie they come out of. Oh, if it didn't come out of a white mother, who gives a damn? Biden's giving your formula to the illegal babies. The illegal babies? That's, again, this is how they scare people into the others are taking what is rightfully yours. You're entitled to everything. America first is what they tell you. The great replacement theory. You can't give them sons of bitches our formula. What happened to compassion? What happened to pro-life? What happened to after-school care? What happened to SNAP benefits being cut? What happened to child tax credits that help take care of kids? They help with the cost of daycare. That most kids that are on, most families that have SNAP, it's to be able to get stuff like formula and diapers and things for these kids that you are now trying to force them to have. You're not pro-life. You're anti-choice. You're not pro-life. Like Jermaine just said, it's okay. Just tell us who you are. Because as Maya Angelou did say, when people show you who they are, believe them. And once you start to believe them and accept that truth, you should make it your goal to vote every last one of them sons of bitches out of office because they don't give a damn about you. They are using you. And I'm not talking about just Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats too. The ones that will sit on their hands and watch it happen and not press for the change. It starts with you. Each one of us needs to make sure that we're bringing somebody to the polls, making sure that they're at the right voting locations and that we vote. We don't let any suppression laws or anything else stop us from doing what we need to do. These people will continue to do this because they are counting on the fact that you will be distracted and you will not give a damn when it's time to vote. They lead you into believing that your vote doesn't matter. You can't make a change. You're just one person. That's the lie. The question is, are you going to believe that lie? Or are you going to push through and you make sure that the people that we put in these offices to make these decisions are the ones that will represent us and not their own interest and special interest that fund them? Thanks for joining us for another week. Y'all take care. Keep the faith. Just hold on, y'all. It's going to get better. Take care. We'll see y'all next week.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. I'm a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. Comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the